I had always dreamed of a space that was truly mine. A place where no one could dictate how I lived, what I displayed, or how I spent my time. For years, my family's opinions had followed me like shadows. Every outfit, every career choice, even the way I arranged my apartment was subject to critique. My sister would smirk and say things like, "That's cute," for someone who doesn't have a real plan. While my parents nodded, pretending to be helpful, but always laced with judgment. So when the opportunity arose to buy a house on my own, I decided to do it quietly. No announcements, no hints, not even a single call home. This was my rebellion. My proof that I could create a life untouched by their interference. The house wasn't enormous or flashy. It was modest, nestled on a quiet street lined with maples that would blaze gold in the fall. There was a small backyard where I could plant roses, a sunroom perfect for my reading nook, and a kitchen that opened onto a dining area. Just the right size for when I finally hosted a dinner for friends, my friends, not theirs. I had signed the papers weeks ago, hired movers, and spent nights arranging furniture and unpacking boxes, all without anyone knowing. Every corner of that home was curated by me. Every detail an assertion of my independence. That Saturday morning, I poured myself a steaming cup of coffee and wandered through the rooms, inhaling the scent of new paint and polished wood. The house was quiet. Too quiet, I thought, a serene sanctuary I had longed for. Then, faintly at first, I heard voices. Light, familiar laughter that immediately made my stomach knot. My parents. And my sister. I froze. My heart jumped into my throat. Could it be a mistake? Maybe they were at the wrong house? But the tone was unmistakable, mocking, casual, as if they owned the place. Panic and disbelief collided inside me, leaving me rooted to the spot. Slowly, carefully, I crept toward the living room. There they were. My parents, strolling in like it was their property, inspecting the light fixtures and peeking into closets, murmuring about how they would have done the paint differently. My sister, of course, was smirking, running her hands over the couch cushions, as if she had an innate right to claim every corner. "Surprise," she said, grinning. "Didn't expect us today, huh?" I opened my mouth, closed it, took a deep breath. My mind raced. This was my home, my sanctuary, and yet here they were, intruding without permission. Years of being measured, compared, belittled, and dismissed flared within me. Every childhood moment where my achievements were minimized surged back. This house was supposed to be mine, untouched by their control. "Hi," I finally said, my voice sounding stranger to my ears than theirs probably did. I tried to keep calm, to mask the storm rising inside. My father didn't meet my eyes. He was scanning the living room like a critic judging a museum exhibit. My mother tilted her head, clearly thinking she had the authority to offer unsolicited advice on furniture placement. And my sister leaned back on the couch, legs stretched, as if she had been living there for years. I felt my hands clench. "This is my house," I said firmly, stepping into the room, my voice louder, demanding attention. "You are not invited." They paused, startled. My mother blinked rapidly, as if my words had broken some unwritten rule. My father's mouth opened, closed, opened again. My sister tilted her head, pretending to laugh, but it faltered almost immediately. "Oh, come on," she said, trying to regain control of the moment. "We're just checking it out. We wanted to see your new place, celebrate a little." I shook my head, letting my anger settle into determination. "Celebrate? You walk into my home uninvited, making comments as if it belongs to you. I have spent weeks making this mine, and I will not let anyone, least of all you three, treat it like it's yours. Leave." The words hung in the air. For the first time they hesitated. The audacity of a single word, "leave," from me seemed to shock them. I could feel the shift before they even acknowledged it. This wasn't just a house, it was a declaration. Every step I took to claim my independence, every decision I had made alone, all the small victories over years of quiet endurance, had led to this moment. My sister smirked, but her confidence wavered. "You really think you can shut us out?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, voice steady. "I don't need your approval, your advice, or your presence. This is my home, my choice, my life. And today, for the first time, I am drawing a line you cannot cross." My parents exchanged a glance, their usual smugness cracking under the weight of reality. I realized then that this confrontation wasn't about furniture, paint, or interior design. It was about power, independence, and finally showing them that I would no longer exist in their shadow. I stood taller, feeling an unfamiliar thrill. Not fear. Not anxiety. Just clarity. This house was more than a building. It was my right to stand firm, to protect my space, my achievements, and my dignity. And I was ready to see if they would respect it. The room was tense, the kind of tension that made the air feel heavy, almost tangible. My parents lingered near the doorway, whispering to each other, their voices low and anxious. My sister, however, had settled on the couch as if she were the queen of the house, propping her elbows on the armrests and stretching out with a self-satisfied smirk. I could feel every second stretching like hours, my pulse hammering, yet underneath it all I was calm in a way that scared them. "I still don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of this," my father finally said, his voice wavering just enough to betray his unease. "It's just a house. Your mother and I are your family. Shouldn't we be allowed to see it?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "See it?" I repeated, my voice controlled, carrying more weight than I had ever managed to summon before. "This isn't a museum for you to inspect. This is my home. And yes, it is a big deal. Every wall, every corner, every piece of furniture has been chosen by me, and I did it alone. You had no say, no input, no permission. And I intend to keep it that way." My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "Sweetheart, we just wanted to celebrate with you. We thought." "Celebrate?" I interrupted, my voice rising slightly. "You call walking into my house uninvited, mocking my choices and acting like it's yours, celebrating? No. That's called trespassing. You are not invited. I asked you to leave." They looked at each other, their expressions flickering between disbelief, hurt, and shock. My sister laughed nervously, trying to mask the sudden uncertainty in her eyes. "You're being dramatic," she said, attempting to reclaim her bravado. "It's just a house. We're your family. You can't shut us out forever." I stepped closer, my hands at my sides, body language deliberate, unwavering. "I can and I have. This isn't about money or walls or furniture. This is about respect. For years I've been ignored, belittled, and compared to someone I'm not. And I've stayed quiet. I've smiled, nodded, and let it slide. But not here. Not now. This is my space. And in my space I make the rules." My father's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth as if to argue, but I held up a hand. "No interruptions. I'm done being overlooked. I am done being told I am less than. You trespassed into the one place I have created for myself, and now you are learning that I can, and will, stand my ground." My sister's smirk faltered further. She sat up straighter, her hands pressed against the couch cushions, a subtle gesture of trying to reclaim authority that she no longer possessed. "You think a house changes everything? You think you can just buy your independence? You're still our child," she said, voice sharp, attempting to wound me with the words she had used all my life. I laughed softly, letting the sound fill the room, calm but carrying the edge of steel. "I am still your child, yes. But I am also a woman who has fought for this, saved for this, and earned it on her own. This house isn't just property. It's proof. Proof that I can exist independently without your constant control. And if you can't respect that, then you cannot be here." My mother's eyes glistened, a mix of guilt and something else, surprise, perhaps even fear. My father shifted uncomfortably, clearly struggling to process the sudden reversal of roles. And my sister, who had always thrived on assuming superiority, faltered completely. The room seemed to shrink around them as my confidence expanded, filling every corner with authority they weren't prepared to face. "You've never listened to me," I continued, letting my voice rise slightly, firm but measured. "You've mocked my choices, criticized my achievements, and dismissed my independence. But I've built this house, this life on my own. You don't get to enter it uninvited. Not today, not ever." My sister's face flushed, her bravado cracking entirely. You'll regret this," she said, trying to sound menacing, but it came out as weak, trembling. I shook my head slowly, smiling without warmth. "No. You'll regret underestimating me, the same way you have for decades. This isn't about me versus you. This is me finally taking ownership of my life. And nothing you do here, nothing you say will change that." For a moment there was silence. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirp of birds outside filled the air. It was heavy, expectant silence, the kind that signals a turning point. I felt a thrill of satisfaction. For the first time, I realized the power dynamic had shifted. I wasn't shrinking into the shadows of my family anymore. I was standing in the light, and they were seeing it for the first time. Then my sister, still desperate to hold on to some semblance of control, leaned forward. "Fine," she said sharply. "But this doesn't mean you can forget where you came from, or that we won't be involved in your life." I let her words hang there, weighing them in my mind before responding. "I haven't forgotten anything," I said steady. "I remember everything. And I've learned that being independent doesn't mean cutting ties. It means knowing where the line is. This house, my choices, my life, that line is here. You cannot cross it." My parents exchanged another glance, silently acknowledging, perhaps for the first time, that their child had grown into someone they couldn't control. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it carried weight. I exhaled, letting the tension seep from my body, though I stayed vigilant. My sister's defiance still lingered, a dangerous flicker of old patterns trying to assert themselves. But I knew this moment was pivotal. This confrontation wasn't just about a house. It was about setting boundaries, asserting independence, and proving to myself that I could claim what was rightfully mine. And as I watched them, unsure of their next move, I realized that for the first time the tables had turned. I wasn't just standing in my house, I was standing in my life, fully in control, untouchable, and entirely free. After the initial confrontation, the room fell into an uneasy silence. My parents hovered near the doorway, whispering to each other, their voices low and hesitant. My sister, though still seated on the couch, no longer exuded the confident arrogance she usually carried. She shifted nervously, glancing between me and my parents, as if trying to find a strategy that would regain control, but there was none. I leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping my coffee, feeling the steady warmth of it seep through my hands, grounding me. This was my first true moment to observe them, not just as parents or siblings, but as intruders who had underestimated me. Their expressions flickered constantly: surprise, disbelief, a hint of guilt, and a faint undertone of fear. I couldn't help but feel a thrill. After years of being the quiet, accommodating child, I was finally the one in control. "Look," my father began, hesitating. "We didn't mean to upset you. We just wanted to see your new home. Isn't that fair?" I shook my head, calm but firm. "It's not fair," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You had your chance to be part of my life respectfully, and for years you ignored boundaries. This isn't just a house. It's the first thing I've built entirely for myself. And today you crossed a line. You're trespassing, and I will not tolerate it." My mother's lips pressed together, the corners twitching as if holding back words she knew would only worsen the situation. "Honey, we didn't think you'd mind," she said, her voice almost pleading. "It's just that, well, you're our daughter. Everything you do feels like it belongs to all of us." I let her words hang in the air, letting the weight of them settle. "No," I said finally, with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. "It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to me. Every choice, every penny, every moment of planning and sacrifice is mine. You have no claim here." My sister shifted on the couch, finally standing, her face flushed. "You think having your own house suddenly makes you better than us? You're nothing without your family," she snapped. But there was a tremor in her voice, a crack in the confidence she had so carefully built over the years. I smiled, though it was devoid of warmth. "Better? I'm not interested in being better than anyone," I said. "I'm interested in being free. For the first time, I have a place where my life, my rules, and my choices are respected. That's what matters. That's what you failed to understand for decades." There was a pause. The room seemed to hold its breath. Even the faint hum of the refrigerator sounded louder in the sudden stillness. I could see the realization dawning on them. Finally, after years of trying to manipulate and control, they could do nothing. I had drawn a line, and this time it wasn't negotiable. My father swallowed, trying to regain some sense of authority. "You think independence is a house? It's not about walls or doors. You'll still need guidance. You'll still make mistakes," he said, his voice shaking slightly. I shook my head, my eyes meeting his. "Guidance doesn't come from fear, control, or judgment. Guidance comes from support. And I've learned over the years that what I needed from you was not guidance but freedom. Freedom to make mistakes, freedom to learn, freedom to succeed on my own terms. And this house, my home, is the first place where I've truly had it. My sister let out a frustrated huff, pacing for a moment. You think just because you've got walls around you we can't reach you, she said, gesturing vaguely to the room, as if to claim some imaginary right. I crossed my arms, leaning slightly forward. No, I said softly but firmly. You can't reach me. Not here. Not now. Not until you understand what it means to respect someone's independence. And yes, I will let you back into my life, into my home, but only when respect is mutual. Until then, this is my space. You are not welcome to violate it again. I could see my parents exchanging glances, their usual composure cracked. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. My father's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue further. Even my sister stopped moving, caught between defiance and hesitation. The power dynamic had shifted, and they knew it. For the first time, I allowed myself to relax slightly. I walked to the window, letting the morning sunlight hit my face. Outside, the trees swayed gently, the street quiet. Inside, the house felt alive, mine in a way I had never experienced before. Every wall, every piece of furniture, every small arrangement was a testament to my independence. I took another deep breath, turning slowly to face them. This isn't just about a house, I said, my voice calm but resonant. It's about me, my life, my choices, my dignity. And for the first time, I am showing you that those things cannot be taken from me. Not now, not ever. My sister's shoulders slumped slightly, her defiance waning as the weight of my words sank in. My parents exchanged another look, silent acknowledgement passing between them. The confrontation had ended, not with a dramatic exit, not with tears or yelling, but with clarity. They understood, at least for the moment, that I had changed. That I was no longer the quiet, compliant child they had always tried to mold. And in that silence I felt something I had never felt before. Peace. The room, the house, the life I had built, it was mine. Fully mine. And I would defend it, not just against intrusion but against anything that threatened my independence. After the confrontation, the house finally settled into a quiet rhythm. I wandered from room to room, touching the surfaces I had chosen myself, arranging things exactly as I liked. It felt surreal, this was truly mine. Every corner of the house whispered independence, a freedom I had only ever imagined before. For so long, I had lived under the subtle tyranny of my family's constant judgment. Now the walls held only my choices, my efforts, my taste. The sun streamed through the living room windows, catching on the polished wood of the floor and the soft cream of the curtains I had selected. I sat on the couch, cup of coffee in hand, savoring the warmth and the quiet. No one was interrupting me, no one was commenting on my decisions, no one was comparing me to my sister. For the first time I felt like I could breathe. But the calm was short-lived. Even as I sank into the comfort of my sanctuary, I knew the tension from earlier had not completely dissolved. My parents lingered near the curb outside, glancing through the windows as though hoping to catch some sign that I had relented. I could see my sister pacing in her car across the street, arms crossed, her expression unreadable but clearly frustrated. I realized then that independence wasn't just about owning a house. It was about maintaining boundaries, enforcing them, and understanding that those who had tried to control me would test me repeatedly. They weren't going to accept this without resistance, and I had to be ready. I spent the afternoon unpacking more boxes, labeling shelves, arranging books just so, feeling a thrill with every item that finally found its place. It was more than organization, it was a declaration. Each decision was a silent statement. This is my life, my rules, and no one can undermine it. The quiet hum of the house became a soundtrack to my newfound power. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, expecting a casual message. Instead, it was my sister. The screen flashed her name, accompanied by a string of texts, each more frantic than the last. We need to talk. You can't keep us out forever. You'll regret this. This isn't right. I read them, my lips pressing together to suppress a laugh. They were realizing too late that I wasn't the person they had controlled for decades. I ignored the messages. I refused to engage with threats disguised as concern. I had learned over the years that responding to manipulation only invited more of it. My silence was deliberate, a new tool of power. I focused instead on arranging the kitchen, placing each plate, glass, and utensil exactly where I wanted it. It was ordinary work, yet it felt revolutionary. Every choice was mine alone. Later in the day, I stepped outside to check the garden. The small patch of soil waited for my first flowers, and I could already envision roses blooming along the fence. Planting them would be my first act of creation in this home. A symbol of life, growth, and independence. I crouched, hands in the earth, letting the cool soil seep into my fingers. It was grounding, a reminder that freedom was not just a concept, but something tangible, something I could cultivate. As the sun dipped lower, shadows stretched across the lawn, and I noticed a figure in the neighbor's yard giving me a curious look. Word must have spread. Neighbors must have seen my parents and sister earlier and talked. For the first time, I realized that this house, my independence, was not just a personal victory. It was a visible statement to everyone around me. Evening approached, and I prepared a simple dinner for myself. As I plated the food, I reflected on the events of the day. My parents and sister had intruded, yes, but their reaction had given me clarity. I had spent years being the accommodating one, shrinking myself to fit their expectations. Today I had claimed my space, my authority, my dignity. And in doing so, I had redefined who I was, not just to them but to myself. Later that night, the tension returned in a subtler form. I could hear the occasional hum of cars outside, the faint murmur of voices, my parents likely discussing strategies, my sister perhaps plotting her next move. It would be naive to think this would be a single confrontation. But I felt prepared. I had drawn my line, and it was unbreakable. Before bed, I walked through the house one last time. Each room, each piece of furniture, each small personal touch reminded me that I had accomplished something monumental. This wasn't just about a house, it was about self-respect, independence, and learning that I had the strength to protect what was mine. I set my alarm for the next day, planning to continue unpacking and arranging, but also anticipating subtle tests from my family. I knew my sister might attempt to manipulate me, my parents might try to guilt me, but for the first time I wasn't afraid. I had built a life that couldn't be overshadowed by their expectations, a home that symbolized my resilience, and a future that I could shape on my own terms. As I turned off the lights, the house felt warm, welcoming, and completely mine. Finally, after years of silent endurance, I understood what independence truly meant. It wasn't a fleeting feeling or a secret victory. It was a deliberate act of claiming one's life, standing firm in the face of intrusion, and refusing to be diminished ever again. The next morning I woke to the quiet hum of my house, a quiet I had never known. It felt almost sacred after the previous day's storm of confrontation. I stretched, opened the blinds, and let the sunlight flood the rooms I had claimed for myself. Everything looked the same, but it felt different now. The walls weren't just walls, they were proof. Proof that I had fought for something and that I could protect it. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window watching the street outside. That's when I noticed movement, my parents lingering at the curb again. This time they weren't just looking. They were talking quietly, glancing toward the front door as if debating whether to step inside. My sister's car appeared shortly after, pulling up slowly as if she were testing the limits of my patience. I felt a familiar flicker of anxiety, quickly suppressed. This was exactly what I had anticipated. Tests, probes, subtle attempts to reclaim control. But I was ready. I texted my sister before she could even knock. If you come onto my property without invitation, I will consider it trespassing. This house, my life, my rules. Respect them. The silence after that message was telling. She wanted to argue, to manipulate, to guilt me into submission, but she hesitated. That hesitation gave me power. Soon after, my phone buzzed again, my mother calling this time. I let it ring, letting it go to voicemail. Then another text. We just want to talk. Please open the door. It's your family. I read it carefully and replied with measured calm. Family doesn't mean entitlement. I will respond when respect is mutual. Until then, I am busy with my life and my home. The shift was subtle but profound. For the first time, I realized the tables had fully turned. They were no longer the ones in control. I was. And it felt intoxicating, but not in a way that made me reckless, It made me deliberate, calculated, empowered. I spent the morning continuing to arrange my home, unpacking boxes, and placing every item exactly as I wanted. Each drawer, each shelf, each chair arrangement felt like an assertion of authority. My sister's veiled threats and my parents' awkward hovering couldn't penetrate the bubble I had created. This was my sanctuary, and I was learning that power wasn't about domination. It was about maintaining boundaries and refusing to let anyone cross them. By afternoon, the tension outside escalated. I could see my sister pacing along the sidewalk, throwing frustrated glances at the house. My parents lingered behind her, trying to offer a semblance of casual concern, but it was thinly veiled panic. Word must have spread through the neighborhood, and suddenly I felt the quiet approval of the world around me. People I had known for years, neighbors who had watched my family's antics, were witnessing my assertion of independence. For once I wasn't shrinking. I was standing firm, visible and unafraid. Then came the first direct test. My sister knocked on the door, lightly at first, then more insistently when I didn't answer. I watched through the window, resisting the urge to confront her immediately. Instead, I reminded myself of every lesson I had learned about patience, control, and the power of choosing when to act. She had expected immediate reaction, an emotional surrender. I gave her none. After a few tense moments, she finally backed away, muttering under her breath. That tiny victory, seemingly insignificant, filled me with a quiet satisfaction. I knew this was just the beginning. There would be more tests, more subtle attempts to regain control, but each step I took reinforced the boundaries I had set. I wasn't just defending a house. I was defending my autonomy, my dignity, my self-worth. The evening brought a rare sense of calm. I cooked a simple dinner for myself, enjoying the peace that came with being alone in my home for the first time without interruption. As I sat at the table, the sunlight fading into warm golden tones across the walls, I reflected on how far I had come. This house was more than a space. It was a declaration. It was proof that I could stand on my own, that I could claim what was mine without apology, without fear, and without compromise. I heard a soft tap at the window, a subtle but deliberate reminder that my family was still aware of my independence. I smiled, not out of arrogance but out of resolve. They were testing me, yes, but I had changed. No longer would I allow fear, guilt, or habit to dictate my actions. This house, these walls, this life, they were mine, and I would defend them fiercely. Late into the night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the long road ahead. My sister would attempt manipulation again. My parents might try guilt or persuasion, but I was prepared. I had tasted the empowerment of standing firm, of asserting boundaries, of refusing to let anyone diminish me. The knowledge that I could maintain my space, my choices, and my dignity was intoxicating and grounding all at once. I finally closed my eyes, feeling the quiet hum of the house around me. It was no longer just a building. It was a symbol of everything I had fought for, a manifestation of my independence, and a safe haven where I could breathe, think, and be myself. I knew challenges would come, but I had discovered the core truth. Independence wasn't given. It was claimed, and I had claimed it. The following morning, the house felt different. Not just mine, but alive with a sense of victory and self-possession. I walked through each room, taking in every detail, and for the first time I felt fully at home. This wasn't just furniture, walls, or paint. It was a declaration that I had grown beyond the child who had always sought approval, the sibling who had always been compared, the daughter who had quietly endured judgment. My phone buzzed. A message from my sister. "Please, we just want to understand. You can't just shut us out forever." I stared at it for a moment, feeling a flicker of the old hesitation, but I didn't reply immediately. I remembered the years of manipulation, the times she had demanded, ridiculed, or tried to control me. This time I wouldn't rush. I would respond on my terms or not at all. Instead, I stepped outside into the morning sun, letting it warm my face and hands. The garden awaited my attention, and I knelt in the soil, planting the first roses I had chosen for this space. Each bloom, each delicate petal, felt like an assertion of life, a tangible proof of my independence. It was quiet work, meditative, grounding, and as I dug, I realized this home was more than a building. It was a fortress, a symbol, a proof that I could stand up for myself without fear. By mid-morning, my parents had appeared again, lingering on the curb. Their expressions were softer this time, less commanding, tinged with hesitation and something I recognized as respect. They were testing me still, I knew, but I was calm. They would no longer intimidate me. I had drawn my boundaries firmly, and this time they would be honored. My sister drove up again, slowly circling the block before finally stopping. I didn't respond to her knocks or calls. Instead, I continued in the garden, letting the sun and the quiet reinforce the strength that had begun to settle into me. She honked once, twice, then drove away, frustrated and powerless. It was a subtle victory, but an important one. They were learning slowly that I had changed, and that my independence wasn't negotiable. Inside, the house hummed with a gentle rhythm, the spaces I had created now filled with quiet confidence. I prepared breakfast for myself, savoring the freedom to cook what I wanted, eat when I wanted, and enjoy the solitude without interference. Every small choice, what mug to use, what music to play, how to arrange the dishes, was mine alone, and the pleasure in that ownership was immense. Later in the afternoon, my parents tried a new approach. My mother called, her voice tentative, softer than usual. "We just wanted to check in. Maybe we overreacted yesterday," she said. I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I understand," I said calmly. "But understand this, my home, my rules, my independence. You will be welcomed when respect is mutual. Until then, I am living my life on my terms." Even my father, usually so domineering, seemed to step back. There was no argument, no insistence, no attempt to reclaim the control he had always assumed was his by default. The realization was clear. They had underestimated me for decades, and now they were learning the lesson that I had long awaited the opportunity to teach, that I was capable, strong, and fully my own person. As evening approached, I lit the small fireplace in the living room, watching the flames dance in the quiet space. The house, now fully settled into my ownership, radiated comfort and independence. I felt a deep sense of peace tempered with pride. This wasn't just about physical space. It was about claiming my life, asserting my worth, and refusing to let old patterns define me. A soft knock at the door startled me, and I walked over, confident and unafraid. Standing there was my neighbor, holding a basket of baked goods. "Saw you finally got your space," she said with a warm smile. "It's beautiful, and I just wanted to welcome you." I smiled genuinely this time. Approval, encouragement, kindness, these were different from intrusion. I opened the door wider, inviting her in. This home was now a place of choice, not control. Later I checked my phone. Another message from my sister, this time asking for small help with a task she assumed I would do. I paused, reflecting on the years I had spent bending, giving, and accommodating. This time I didn't rush. I replied clearly, "I will help when respect is mutual, not before." Her tone shifted immediately, less demanding, more aware. She was beginning to understand slowly the boundaries I had set. That night I stood at the window looking out at the quiet street. The world outside was still, but inside I had carved out something permanent. A space where my voice mattered, where my choices mattered, where I mattered. I felt untouchable, not because of wealth or possessions, but because I had claimed my power, defended my independence, and finally learned to respect myself above all else. For the first time I realized the true meaning of home. It wasn't just walls and furniture. It was freedom. It was the courage to stand firm, the strength to say no, and the knowledge that I would never again allow anyone to diminish me. My parents and sister might linger, might test, might try to manipulate, but I was ready. And in this house, in this life I had created alone, I was unstoppable. As I turned off the lights, the gentle hum of my home surrounded me. This was mine, fully, utterly, and undeniably mine. And for the first time in my life, I knew what it truly felt like to be free.